On a cloudy morning, in the midst of the hustle of a new day, a young woman dressed with care for the interview that could change the course of her life. She was elegantly dressed, holding a firm portfolio and a heart full of hope. Little did she know that the door she was about to knock on would open not only to a professional opportunity, but to a past she swore she had left behind. What seemed like just another job interview would actually be the most unexpected and transformative reunion of her existence. This is the story of Alana, a strong, intelligent, and determined woman who, after years of fighting alone to rebuild her life, finally got the chance to join a big company to compete for a project manager position. What she did not know was that behind that position, that company, and that stunning mansion where the interview would take place, was him, the man who loved her deeply, and who was also responsible for the greatest disappointment of her life. If you have ever experienced something you thought was buried in the past, but that, when it reappeared, forced you to face memories, feelings, and decisions you thought were settled, then you will relate to what happened to Alana. And if you stay until the end, you will see how a reunion can change not only the present, but the entire future. The ending of this story will move you. On that day, Alana woke up early. She had slept little. The anxiety was natural. After all, this interview represented more than just a simple job. It was a chance to prove to herself that she was capable of getting back up. She had studied hard, prepared her resume with attention to the smallest details, and practiced every possible answer in front of the mirror. She had nitrogen monoxide idea that the address she had written down, that luxurious mansion at the top of a noble neighborhood in the city, would be the setting for a reunion that fate itself seemed to have arranged. And when the car stopped in front of the huge gates, Alana's heart beat differently, as if the past was about to touch her again. The security guard greeted her politely and led her along a path lined with trees and lush flowers. It was impossible not to be impressed by the place, but even more impressive would be what awaited her on the other side of the dark, imposing wooden door, which was now about to open before her. For a second, she hesitated. She took a deep breath, adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, and gently rang the bell. The sound echoed through the entrance, and when the door opened, Alana's eyes froze. She recognized that face immediately. The eyes that once made her dream, the smile that was a shelter. The man who, years ago, had broken her heart into 1,000 pieces. In front of her was Cale, now visibly more mature, elegant, with the presence of someone who built an empire, but with a glance that faltered the very second he saw her. The portfolio almost slipped from Alana's hand. For a moment, neither of them could speak. The silence weighed more than 1,000 words. It was not just a reunion. It was a confrontation with everything that had been lived and lost. Cale, the one who loved her and then disappeared without explanation, was now the CEO of the company where she sought a new chance. He was there, not as a ghost from the past, but as the man with the power to say yes or nitrogen monoxide to the next step of her life. Fate not only put them face to face, it trapped them in the same scenario at the same moment, as if to say, no W, settle what was left unfinished. Alana tried to keep her composure. It was as if she was living a scene from a movie, one that you watch with tears in your eyes and a tightness in your chest. Time seemed to fold over itself. Everything she lived with him, the promises, the kisses, the pain of the unexplained departure, everything returned with overwhelming force. Cale was also visibly shaken. He expected any candidate, but not her. That woman, now even more beautiful, stronger, more determined. He wanted to say something, but the weight of guilt and time seemed to lock his voice. And before he could say anything, Alana lifted her head and sighed firmly. I'm here for the interview. What followed was more than a simple professional conversation. It was a minefield of hidden emotions, open wounds that never healed, glances that sawed what words could not. But at the same time, IT was also a new chance, an unexpected opportunity. To give new meaning to the past, Alana's heart was beating like never before. While remembering the love, she also remembered the pain. She did not know if she would forgive him, did not know if she wanted to go back in time. But one thing was certain: she was nitrogen monoxide longer the girl who cried when he disappeared. She was a woman, whole, with wounds that turned into scars, and with enough courage to face even an old love that rebirths before her eyes. Cale tried to keep his posture, but inside him, an avalanche of feelings also invaded him. He knew he had made a mistake. He let the woman of his life escape, and now she was there, more beautiful than ever, ready to win the position. And perhaps, unknowingly, give him the only thing he did not have: redemption. The interview began, but nothing in that environment was ordinary. Each question came loaded with memories. Each answer was a reminder of everything they had lived. Professionalism mixed with emotion. Both knew that this meeting was more than a selection process. IT was a settling of accounts between what they were and what they still could be. As the minutes passed, Alana wondered if she was there on merit, or if that reunion was an emotional trap. And Cale, on the other side of the table, wondered how to make sure that woman did not leave his life again. But this time, he would not let pride or fear decide for him. Outside, the world kept its pace, but inside that room, two hearts beat to an old and deep rhythm. Fate had crossed their paths again, and now everything depended on the courage of both to face not only the past, but the future that still could be written. This story will still surprise you, because what seemed like a painful reunion will turn into a powerful lesson about forgiveness, choices, and new beginnings. Stay with me until the end. You will understand why certain loves do not die. They just wait for the right moment to bloom again. The clock showed exactly 10 minutes since the interview started, but for Alana, every second there seemed to last an eternity. She held her eyes steady, shoulders back, trying not to let her heart overflow through her voice. She knew she was being watched not only as a candidate for the position, but as the woman he had left in the past without explanation. And that made everything even harder. While reading the notes on her resume, Cale fought an internal battle. Every word on the paper seemed to clash with what he saw before him. It was as if everything was too real. For years, he imagined what it would be like to reunite with HR, if she still thought of him, if she hated him, if she had moved on. And now, it was all there before him, more vivid than any memory could offer. The room was silent. Only the soft sound of a pen scratching the paper broke the tension. Alana used every second to regain control of her breathing. She knew that if she let emotion take over, everything she had prepared would be thrown away. She couldn't let her past overshadow her competence. She needed to show who she had become. No words had yet touched directly on their past. It was like a rope stretched to the maximum, about to snap. Both avoided looking at each other for more than 2 seconds, as if their eyes held answers neither was ready to hear. But the silence carried much more than 1,000 unvoiced confessions. The first question came, technical and direct, about team management. Alana answered clearly, citing experiences and results. Each sentence showed her evolution, her capacity, her maturity. And even though Cale tried to keep his CEO posture, something in his look revealed he was listening to every answer with a conflicted heart. In Alana's mind, every word had to be measured, but inside, she was a storm, reliving everything in that unexpected scenario required more strength than any psychological test. Seeing that face again made her remember sleepless nights, broken promises, plans that died without warning, and yet, she was there, steady. At the same time, Cale wondered how life would have been if he had made different choices. Seeing Alana so whole, so determined, was a mix of relief and pain. Part of him wanted to stop the interview and say everything he felt during the years they spent apart, But he knew it was not the moment. Or maybe he was afraid to discover it was too late. The second question involved conflict resolution. Alana answered with an example from a previous company where she prevented a mass layoff with diplomacy and empathy. Cale was impressed. She always had that gift, dealing with people with humanity, even in pressure environments. That was one of the things he most admired about her, and maybe one reason he never forgot her. There was nitrogen monoxide doubt Alana was qualified. Her trajectory spoke for itself, but what touched Cale the most was not on paper. I too was the woman herself. She had become exactly what she promised to be, someone great, even without him around. And that hurt, because now he knew he was nitrogen monoxide longer indispensable to her, if he ever was. Time passed, and the tension began to change form. IT was nitrogen monoxide, longer just discomfort, but a kind of rediscovery. They were there, reliving what they were, but seeing each other with the eyes of those who learned a lot from pain. And that created a new kind of connection, more mature, more dense, more real. At one point, Alana let out a light smile while telling a funny story about a former boss. IT was spontaneous, sincere, and that smile brought back memories Cale held dear. He remembered the afternoons she laughed fearlessly, the inside jokes, the way she turned any place into a home. Inside, Cale felt a mix of admiration and regret. He knew the mistake he made years ago was not small. Disappearing without explanation was cowardly. But at the time, he thought it was necessary. He was afraid of involving her in a family chaos he didn't know how to handle. Now he saw that running away only made the pain last longer. Alana did not show IT, but she felt something inside her beginning to give way. I too was not forgiveness yet, but perhaps an opening. Time had hardened certain parts, but seeing Cale there, vulnerable in his eyes and restrained in his words, made her remember the man she once loved, and how much everything could have been different. The interview continued with increasingly complex questions, but for Alana, the real challenge was to keep her heart quiet. She knew she couldn't lower her guard so easily. She didn't want to seem weak, and most of all, she didn't want to confuse a memory with a future that might not even exist anymore. Cale, for his part, began to realize that the woman before him was nitrogen monoxide, longer the same one he left behind. She had blossomed even without him. It was evident that she had moved on, even with scars, and that made him want to reconquer not only the woman but her respect. He wanted to show that he had changed too, amid it all. There was a pause. Coffee was offered. Alana accepted. They sat for a few minutes in the mansion's garden. The silence was lighter there. The flowers, the sound of the fountain, the smell of the fresh air. Everything created an almost symbolic scene, as if time had been suspended just for them. Cale took a personal risk and asked, "Are you really okay?" Alana looked at him for a few seconds before answering, "I am. It took time, but I am." And that answer said more than any resume account. It was the summary of a story of pain, struggle, and rebuilding. That moment in the garden marked a transition. It was nitrogen monoxide, longer just an interview. It was a reunion of souls that, despite everything, still recognized each other. Even though camouflaged by experiences in time, there was something between them that not even absence could completely erase. Alana was at peace with who she had become. But there, in front of him, it was unavoidable to wonder, was there still something to be lived between them? Or was everything left just memories wrapped in a longing that does not know how to die? Cale wanted to find the right moment to talk about the past, but each time he tried to start, her professionalism silenced him. She was there on merit, and he knew he couldn't mix feelings with the responsibility of deciding who would take the position. As they walked back to the room, Alana felt her heart beginning to confuse itself. She wanted to stay strong, but part of her recognized that there were still sparks in Cale's eyes. And that was dangerous, because where there is a spark, there can be fire, and she knew very well How that fire could consume everything. The next minutes were calmer, more technical questions, logic tests. Alana answered with precision. Her intelligence and preparation were unquestionable. But Cale couldn't see her only as a professional anymore. He saw her as the woman who still made his heart wobble. When the interview ended, he thanked her formally. Alana thanked him too, with a slight nod of the head. But when she turned to leave, she heard his voice call her name. She stopped, and that instant, frozen in time, was the ominous sign of something yet to come. Her eyes turned slowly. There was expectation in the air. And then, Cale sighed, almost whispering, "Do you have a minute before you go?" Alana took a deep breath. She knew that minute could change everything. And even without answering, she turned back to listen to what he had to say. Alana returned slowly, with steady steps but a racing heart. She still held the folder close to her chest as if it were armor. Cale's voice, different, almost broken, awakened in her sensations she tried to contain. She didn't want to lose herself again. She had rebuilt herself once. Maybe she couldn't handle it a second time. Cale asked them to sit again, but now on a sofa farther from the formal room. The atmosphere was less professional, more intimate. His eyes were teary. Although he tried to hide it, he took a deep breath several times before saying the first sentence. And when he spoke, it wasn't about the job or the resume. It was about her. "I never stopped thinking about you." The phrase came like a soft thunder, devastating and silent at the same time. Alana didn't immediately react. She just lowered her eyes as if trying to hide the scars she still carried inside her chest. That statement was late, but why did it still affect her so much? Silence lingered for a few seconds before he continued. "I know what I did was cowardly, not answering, not explaining, just disappearing. I have blamed myself every day since." Cale spoke with raw sincerity, without embellishments, as if he didn't expect forgiveness but needed to get it off his chest. Alana raised her eyes calmly, and her voice, when she spoke, was firm and serene. "You left me alone. I searched for you. I waited for answers. I tried to understand what happened, but you just vanished. You broke my heart as if it were disposable." There was pain in her words, but also strength. She was nitrogen monoxide, longer the woman who begged for love. Cale nodded slowly. "At the time, my father was sick, the family business was collapsing, and there was immense pressure for me to take over. He forbade me from being with you. He said you didn't belong to our world. I was young, weak, stupid. I thought distancing you was protecting you from what I was going to face." The confession was a silent plea for understanding. Alana's breath grew heavy. "That explained a lot, but didn't justify everything. You could have trusted me. We were strong together. I would have faced everything with you." The hurt showed in every syllable. She had been left behind by a choice that wasn't hers, and that hurt more than any late explanation. Cale took his hands to his face, as if trying to hide the shame that haunted him. "You're right. I didn't trust you, and that was the biggest mistake of my life." The words hung in the air between them like echoes of a story that refused to end. Much remained unsaid, but for the first time in years, they were finally facing the truth. As much as Alana wanted to keep her composure, something inside her began to open. It wasn't immediate forgiveness nor emotional surrender. It was like a door ajar, where light begins to enter after a long time in darkness. Did she still love him? That was the question her heart tried to avoid at all costs. Cale's eyes ran over her face like someone trying to memorize every detail again. It was as if he was afraid. This moment was just an illusion about to vanish, and seeing her there, so real, so strong, he knew he never really forgot her. Alana, for her part, remembered everything. The unanswered letters, the night she cried in her room, asking God why love turned into absence, and now there, in front of the man who made her bleed inside, she saw a new face in him, a man who was repentant, different, maybe transformed. A part of her wanted to get up and leave, say was too late. But another, deeper part whispered that maybe this was the conversation she needed to finally free herself from pain. Forgiveness, she knew, wasn't just for him. It was for herself. The next minutes were filled with memories. They remembered the day they met, their first kiss in the rain, the unexpected trip they took together, the promises they made under the stars. It was all so vivid that for a moment, time seemed to pause. Cale didn't hide his tears. As he spoke of his guilt, I tried to move on. I dated other people, but none came close to what I felt for you. I looked for you many times, but you had already disappeared from social media. From our circles, it was as if the world had hidden you from me. His voice truly trembled. Alana listened carefully, but still cautiously. She didn't want to confuse regret with love. She knew the human heart was treacherous when it feels. Seen again. You say you never forgot me. But you never searched for me with courage either. Sending anonymous flowers is not the same as asking for forgiveness looking into my eyes. He nodded silently. He was there to hear whatever was necessary. He knew if he had any chance, it was now or never. More than winning back love, he wanted to make amends. He couldn't change the past, but maybe he could care for the future. The surroundings seemed to fade away. It was as if the outside world was suspended. In that moment, there was only the two of them, sitting on a sofa in a huge mansion, but emotionally deep in a room of the past where broken promises remained. Alana then sighed something that took Cale by surprise. I don't know if I can love you like before, but I can look at you without pain, and that's already a lot. The maturity in her words was admirable. She was a woman who learned to heal without depending on apologies. By this point, Cale didn't expect to rekindle anything right then, but the fact that she was willing to talk, to listen, to look him in the eye again, was all he needed to rekindle hope. And inside him, a certainty grew. He would not lose her again without a fight. She stood up, ready to leave. She had left everything she could in that room, words, feelings, strength. But before leaving, she looked at him with a mix of tenderness and firmness. If I am chosen for this position, I want it to be for my merit, not for guilt, not for longing. I want you to see who I am today. Cale, standing, nodded with teary eyes. You have my respect, and if it's up to me, the whole world will see that. The way he sighed, it wasn't just professional. It was personal. It was a promise from someone who nitrogen monoxide longer wanted to run from what he felt. She walked to the door. The sun was shining outside now, as if nature was celebrating the closure of a cycle. And when she passed through the mansion gates, she felt something new inside her, lightness. For the first time in years, the past was nitrogen monoxide, longer a prison. It was just a part of the story. Inside, Cale remained still, looking at the empty garden. The emptiness of her absence was stronger than ever, but at the same time, there was something different, a seed of hope. Maybe she would return. Maybe they still had something to live. Alana took a taxi and didn't look back, but inside her, a question silently throbbed. What if it's different now? It was too soon for answers, but something in her chest sighed their story was not over yet. The following days passed like a whirlwind of emotions. Alana returned to her routine, trying to keep her feet on the ground. She tried to forget the reunion, keep her mind focused on other interviews, other paths, but something inside her would not allow it. The memory of that conversation, Cale's repentant look, the words finally spoken, seemed to follow her in silence. She didn't know what to expect. She didn't know if it was just another interview among many, or if that reunion had left the same mark on him that it left on her. She knew, however, that she needed to move on. She had learned, through pain, not to place her hopes in unmade promises. And so, even with a restless heart, she continued her life. For a week. No calls, no emails, nitrogen monoxide signals. And that made her think that maybe it had all ended right there. that Kale had made peace with the past. But their lives had taken two different directions to align again. There was no anger, only a slight melancholy of someone who knows that not everything can be as we would like. But then, on a sunny Thursday morning, her phone rang. It was a call from an unknown number. When she answered, she heard the calm voice of a woman. "Alana? Good morning. This is the Human Resources team from Horizon Company. Could we talk?" Her heart raced. The conversation was direct. She had been selected for the position. The choice was unanimous. Her technical skills, professional attitude, experience, everything about her had enchanted the board. There was nitrogen monoxide mention of the reunion. Everything was said formally, but she knew. She knew he had been part of the decision. The contract was signed 2 days later. Alana was now part of the company, one of the largest technology companies in the country. Her new office was on the 10th floor, with a view mixing horizon and possibilities. But what intrigued her most was that, since her entry, she had not seen Kale anymore, not even in the hallways. She didn't know if that was a relief or a frustration. She expected a gesture, a nod, perhaps even a note, but nothing came, and over time, she began to believe that he had decided to leave her in peace. Maybe that reunion had been just a chance to close the story with dignity, and that, by itself, was a victory. Until on a Friday at the end of the workday, she received a calendar notification on her corporate email. Strategic Alignment Meeting, Gold Room 6 p.m. It was strange. It was already the weekend, and she didn't remember any scheduled agenda. Still, she went. The room was empty when she arrived, but on the table was a single flower, a purple orchid, and next to it, an envelope with her name. Inside, a handwritten letter. It was from Kale, and just the first line made her hands tremble. "Alana, I could have written 1,000 emails, but none would say what I am about to say. That's why I chose this form, direct, sincere, and courageous. Like you have always been all of that, and now it's my turn to be too." The words that followed were diving into the heart of a repentant man. He spoke about lost time, about the silence that kept them apart, about the days he thought of giving up on everything because he couldn't forget her. But above all, he spoke about the desire to do things differently. "I don't want to disturb you. I don't want to mix our professional stories with our emotions, but I want a chance. A conversation, a coffee, a walk in the park, a night looking at the stars. A new story, if you want to start one with me." Alana read each line as if it were a song, and when she finished, there were nitrogen monoxide tears in her eyes, but a smile, one of those soul-born smiles when the heart feels that, for the first time, someone is trying to make it work. Minutes later, the door to the room opened slowly. It was him. Nitrogen monoxide suit, nitrogen monoxide formalities, just the man who once lost her, and now was there, willing not to make the same mistake again. "I didn't know if you would come," he sighed with sincere nervousness, "but I had to try." Alana didn't answer immediately. She stood up, walked to him, looked into his eyes with the confidence of someone who has fallen and risen many times. And then, with a light smile, she sighed, "I came, because you also came." It was the beginning of a new cycle. The days that followed were discreet. They decided to live something new, calmly, with respect. They did not mix their worlds abruptly. He gave space. She gave time. But the after-work meetings, the coffees outside the office, the glances in the hallways, all spoke for themselves. Little by little, what seemed impossible began to happen. The grudges lost their strength. Resentment turned into learning. And love, which had never died completely, began to bloom again, now more mature, now with deeper roots. On an autumn late afternoon, Kale took her to the same place where they had their first kiss years ago. It was a public garden, simple but full of meaning. There, he held her hands inside. "I am not trying to go back to the past. I am trying to build a future. Alana looked around, saw the dry leaves covering the ground, felt the light wind touch her face, and answered, "This time, let's plant something that blooms at the right time." They embraced, and in that embrace, they sealed a silent promise that everything from then on would be different. Today, Alana is one of the most respected directors at Horizon. Recognized for her competence, her story of overcoming has become an inspiration inside and outside the company. Kale, in turn, has learned to be a better leader, more human, more present. They don't tell their story to everyone, but those who know them closely know that behind the discreet smiles and complicit glances there is a journey marked by pain, forgiveness, and true love. Because sometimes destiny separates yous just to bring yous together at the right time. And if you believe that true love can wait, survive, and be reborn stronger, then this story was made for you. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. This is just one of the many stories we will still tell together.